this is actually morphing into a question. Roz, I know you're involved most recently in a project to look at the perils of narcissism in the psychedelic work more broadly, as well as psychedelic assisted psychotherapy. I wonder if you could share with us a little bit of what you've seen arise, and again, what antidotes you see, one being perhaps these small communities.
Love that idea of the small groups of clinicians to really, yeah, oversee each other. And when somebody starts going a bit off the rails, to gently nudge them back in. So yeah, over the last few years, I think many of us were kind of just talking in kind of private conversations about having noticed that there was um, almost quite a normal, almost like if you can imagine on a graph, like a kind of a curve where when you start in psychedelics, there might be an initial inflation for a while, kind of going up a bit, kind of thinking you're a bit special, having these special insights, feeling very connected maybe to a mystical source, feeling very full of love, but also self-love, and which is wonderful, but feeling that we're somehow, we're seeing things that other people aren't seeing. There's this kind of slight ego expansion, perhaps. And then sometimes that goes quite high, and people start having very kind of intense ideas around, I suppose, synchronicities and synchronicities and those kind of things can happen more in the psychedelic world, but we start really believing that everything is infused with meaning and our actions are so important, and we're the center of the universe, and of course we all are the center of the universe, but we all are, and we're all incredibly special, but we all are. So it's like, often what happens is there's a real smash back down to earth when you really get your kind of pummeling, like whether in a psychedelic experience where your ego gets like, if you get a bit too big for your boots, you can be kind of, monumentally smacked down, which is great. It's like a rebalancing effect, and I've definitely had that. It's not nice or fun at the time, but it's a very effective way of, yeah. But sometimes what seems to happen is that some people that work in the science field, instead of getting smashed down to earth, they just keep going up and up and up. And that can be in the underground, people working in projects, or medicine facilitators who just become more and more inflated. People idolize them, look up to them, project that they're healers. People trust them. They're working with these medicines that make people a bit vulnerable and suggestible. They can become like cult leaders, and then they can abuse those positions of trust in terribly harmful ways. But also above ground with therapists as well, there's quite a lot of cases now where therapists have gone up and up and up. And I think sometimes through personal use of psychedelics, that becomes more like an abusive habit, where people actually just become really quite disengaged with reality, and lose their commitment to do no harm, and start to become quite out of touch with reality. So I mean, those are kind of extreme cases, but I think there's a whole different way. So we're having an event on the 23rd of May, which is going to be a kind of community gathering where we're going to hear from a number of speakers, to talk about this issue of inflated kind of narcissism. And we're calling it Wetiko. So I don't know if you've heard of the term Wetiko, but there was a really wonderful book that's written by Paul Levy, and it's about Wetiko is this concept of a mind virus that is all about extraction, and that in the West we're kind of quite sick with Wetiko. The word is a Native American term originally, and it describes this kind of like the Western extractive tendency, and how it's like, can psychedelics actually inflate Wetiko, and how can we use psychedelics to help us shake off Wetiko rather than unknowingly have our Wetiko inflated.
Yeah, no, thank you. As you spoke, it reminds me of this this thought I've had sometimes about doing integration work, that if, as a psychotherapist now, that, if a patient comes in and they've had a powerful psychedelic experience and they say, it's so moving and, I realize I'm God. And so are you, and so is that plant, and that's fine. I live a few miles from where the Transcendentalists, which was a movement in American theology of seeing God in everything, where that was where that took root. However, if the client or patient comes in and says, "I've realized that I'm God and you're not," then we have a real problem on our hands. And you're really talking about that that difference.